Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Phyllis is given a 10-year prison warning after Mariah confesses to attempting to kill someone. While Phyllis Summers faces a 10-year prison term, Mariah Copeland will confess to murder. Tessa Porter will sing while Daniel Romalotti Jr. plays a guitar tune in the park. When they are done, Daniel will be raving about Tessa's ability to make the song as lovely as she is. Before Mariah interrupts and requests a private conversation, Tessa will acknowledge that it was pleasant to hear. Mariah will remark on Tessa's good relationship with Daniel after he departs. Mariah will admit that she's still a mess and that her therapist believes she needs more intensive therapy at a clinic in Boston, since Tessa will want to talk about her instead. Given that Mariah isn't totally there when they spend time together, Tessa will admit that Aria Porter Copeland may find it simpler to avoid her company. Tessa will become irate with Mariah being so far away in front of her, and the conversation will become tense. Tessa will claim that Mariah's secret couldn't be worse than what she is doing at the moment and that she doesn't understand why she has destroyed their family. Mariah will intervene and ultimately decide to reveal what she did, even though Tessa will begin to storm off. Tessa will stand there seeming astonished when Mariah reveals that she attempted to kill a man. Kyle Abbott will reveal to Claire Newman the conditions of his agreement with Victor Newman at Crimson Lights. He will admit that he promised to pay $5 million and leave town permanently if he deceived or damaged her. A portion of Claire will be affected by Kyle's actions, but she will also feel that he placed a cost on their relationship. Although Kyle will maintain that he wasn't even considering his arrangement with Victor, Claire will question whether he remained quiet about what transpired with Audra Charles because he could have lost $5 million. Kyle will be frantic to find a way to put things all right, but Claire won't understand how. Kyle will reassure Claire that she can have both time and space after she demands both. Since Kyle hopes they might return to their previous position and Claire suggests they might be able to reach a better one, the conversation will conclude on a positive one. After that, Phyllis will be called by Nick Newman to a conversation by the water so they can take in the scenery and talk about Kane Ashby. Nick will try to get Phyllis to acknowledge that Kane is using her to gain authorized access to businesses and that he has her researching artificial intelligence, since he will think that Kane hired her because of her hacking abilities. Although Phyllis will not enjoy being interrogated, Nick will advise her to leave Kane since he is guiding her down a dangerous path that might land her in jail for at least 10 years. Phyllis will reassure Nick that she was unaware of the developments and has not committed any crimes in order to provide updates on the AI software that Kane's team created. Additionally, Kane appears to have abandoned his plan in an attempt to mend his ties with his family, according to Phyllis. Phyllis will inform Nick that she doesn't desire respect at the expense of losing her children, even though she is pursuing it. Nick will ask Phyllis for a favor and say that he needs her assistance to save Genoa City after she thanks him for saving her from herself. To keep one step ahead of Kane, Nick will pressure Phyllis to reveal anything he tells her. Nick will give Phyllis a quick kiss on the cheek and thank her for agreeing to keep him updated. Because she was unaware of the scope of Kane's AI strategy, Phyllis will later contact his phone and vent her rage. "You're a bitch, son. What were you putting me into? And why didn't you tell me?" On Tuesday's Y&R show, Phyllis will inquire. Phyllis Summers had always been known as a woman who thrived in chaos, a force of nature who could manipulate, outwit, and survive nearly any storm Genoa City threw her way. But even she had to admit that this time the storm clouds were darker than ever before, because the possibility of a 10-year prison sentence was looming over her head like a dagger ready to fall. And the irony was that it wasn't her own reckless actions that placed her here, but rather the ripple effect of Mariah Copeland's shocking confession. A confession so raw and staggering that it left even Tessa Porter speechless when her wife admitted in hushed, broken words that she had tried to kill someone. The revelation dropped like a bomb in the peaceful aftermath of Tessa's song at the park, where Daniel Romalotti Jr. had strummed a gentle guitar tune, harmonizing with Tessa's voice as if to remind the world that beauty still existed even in fractured hearts. And while Daniel gushed about how Tessa made the song as lovely as she was, Mariah stood on the sidelines, weighed down by secrets so heavy they crushed every piece of joy in her. And once Daniel left with a smile, Mariah wasted no time asking Tessa for privacy because she couldn't hold the burden any longer, though she began not with the shocking confession but with a shaky admission that her therapist wanted her in a Boston clinic, a higher level of treatment because she wasn't fully present even when she tried to be, and Tessa's heart cracked at the thought that their daughter, Aria, might grow up learning to distance herself from a mother who couldn't fully engage. Emotions spiraled, Tessa's frustration boiled over, and she accused Mariah of already tearing their family apart by being emotionally distant, by refusing to let her in, and by hiding a secret that surely couldn't be worse than the slow destruction happening now. But then came the breaking point when Mariah, her voice trembling and her eyes wet with fear, admitted that she had once attempted to kill a man, and the silence that followed was so deep it threatened to swallow both women whole, leaving Tessa rooted to the spot in stunned disbelief as she processed the enormity of her wife's words. Meanwhile, at Crimson Lights, Kyle Abbott was unraveling a confession of his own to Claire Newman, one that involved Victor Newman's manipulative grip on him, because Kyle revealed that he had agreed to pay Victor $5 million and leave Genoa City forever if he ever betrayed or damaged Claire, a revelation that left Claire torn between admiration that Kyle valued her enough to make such a costly promise and devastation that their love could be measured in millions, as if Victor had turned their relationship into a cold transaction. Though Kyle swore his choices had never been about money, Claire couldn't help but question whether his silence about Audra Charles and the mess surrounding her was influenced by that very threat. And even as Kyle frantically insisted that he wanted nothing more than to fix things, Claire pushed for both time and space, unsure if their love could survive on promises alone, though a faint glimmer of hope lingered when she admitted that perhaps one day they could not only go back to where they were but find something even stronger, leaving Kyle clinging to that fragile thread of optimism. Across town, Nick Newman's concern for Phyllis reached a boiling point when he invited her for a lakeside conversation, where the waves whispered warnings that she stubbornly ignored at first, but Nick's persistence couldn't be silenced because he suspected Kane Ashby was using her, exploiting her hacking expertise to gain access to confidential corporate systems under the guise of developing cutting-edge artificial intelligence. Though Phyllis bristled at Nick's interrogation, he pushed harder, painting a vivid picture of the prison bars that could slam shut for 10 long years if she continued down Kane's dangerous path. And though Phyllis swore she hadn't crossed legal lines and believed Kane had abandoned his more sinister plans in hopes of reconciling with his family, even she couldn't deny the alarm bells ringing in her chest when Nick reminded her that Kane was the kind of man who only abandoned a plan if he had something bigger waiting in the shadows. Phyllis admitted that she wanted respect but not at the cost of losing her children, a sentiment that softened Nick enough to pull her into a moment of vulnerable honesty where he asked for her help, pressing her to feed him information about Kane's movements so he could stay one step ahead and protect Genoa City from a crisis no one else saw coming. And though Phyllis resented the implication that she couldn't manage her own choices, she couldn't ignore the spark of gratitude in her heart when Nick kissed her cheek in thanks for agreeing, even reluctantly, to act as his inside source. But the peace between them didn't last long, because as Phyllis absorbed everything Nick had said, the reality of how deeply Kane had pulled her into his orbit began to sink in, and in a surge of fiery rage she called his phone, her voice shaking with a mix of betrayal and fury, demanding answers with the venom only Phyllis could muster, shouting, "You son of a bitch! What the hell were you dragging me into, and why didn't you warn me?" Words that echoed like a gunshot across the evening, setting the stage for yet another explosion of secrets, betrayals, and consequences that would ripple through Genoa City, leaving families fractured, lovers torn apart, and lives forever changed. Because in the world of the Newmans, the Abbotts, and everyone tangled in their orbit, the truth never stayed buried for long, and when it finally surfaced, it always came at the highest possible cost. The world seemed to tilt for Tessa Porter as she stood frozen in the park, her eyes locked on Mariah Copeland, the woman she loved more than life itself, the mother of her child, and the one person she thought she knew inside and out. Yet here she was, shaking to her core after hearing Mariah's admission that she had attempted to kill a man. The words felt like knives, cutting into the bond they had built. And as Tessa's chest rose and fell with rapid breaths, she wasn't sure if she should comfort her wife, run away, or demand every single detail until there was nothing left unspoken. Her voice quivered when she finally found the strength to speak, barely more than a whisper. "What do you mean? You tried to kill someone?" And that single question opened a floodgate of truth that Mariah had been holding back for far too long. Mariah's face was pale, her eyes glassy with tears as she stared down at her trembling hands. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she began, her voice cracked by both guilt and fear. It was a moment of rage, of desperation. He hurt someone I love. He threatened to destroy everything, and I lost control. I planned it, Tess. I wanted him gone. I wanted him to pay. Tessa flinched, her heart pounding in her ears, unable to reconcile the woman before her with the horrifying confession spilling from her lips. Who, Mariah? She demanded, her tone sharper now, trembling with both anger and dread. Who were you trying to kill? The name caught in Mariah's throat like barbed wire, but before she could choke it out, their daughter Aria stirred in her stroller nearby, whimpering softly, and the sound shattered the tension for a split second. Mariah rushed to soothe her, brushing her tiny cheek with gentle fingers, and Tessa's heart ached because the same hands that comforted their child had once been prepared to take a life. The dichotomy was unbearable. When Aria settled, Tessa turned back, her eyes blazing. You don't get to hide behind silence anymore. Tell me who it was, or I'll never be able to look at you the same way again. Back at Crimson Lights, Kyle Abbott was still reeling from his conversation with Claire Newman, the image of her wounded eyes haunting him. He had bared his soul, revealed the ugly truth about Victor Newman's deal, and yet it felt like it had only pushed Claire further away. Sitting alone at their table, Kyle buried his face in his hands, muttering under his breath that he couldn't lose her, not now, not ever. Summer had already slipped through his fingers, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing Claire too. But as much as he wanted to fight for her, he knew he had no right to force her hand, not when he had kept so many secrets, especially about Audra Charles. And somewhere deep down, Kyle feared Claire would never forgive him if she uncovered the full truth on her own. Meanwhile, Nick Newman's conversation with Phyllis continued to echo through her head like a siren. Every warning he gave, every reminder that Kane Ashby was a ticking time bomb, gnawed at her even as she clung to her pride. Phyllis had spent her entire life dancing on the edge of danger, but Nick's words about a 10-year prison sentence made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time, genuine fear. Not for herself, but for what her absence would do to her children, to Daniel and Summer. Losing their respect had already cost her dearly, but prison would erase her from their lives in ways she might never recover from. Her phone buzzed in her hand, yanking her from her spiraling thoughts. It was Kane. She stared at his name flashing across the screen, her stomach twisting with a mixture of fury and dread. Against her better judgment, she answered, her voice sharp and venomous. You've got some nerve calling me right now. Kane's smooth Australian accent slid through the line, calm, almost amused. Phyllis, darling, I was hoping we could have a civilized conversation. I hear you've been talking to Nick. That was enough to make her blood boil. You son of a bitch, she snapped, her voice rising. What the hell are you dragging me into? Do you want me in prison? Is that the goal? Kane chuckled darkly. On the contrary, sweetheart. Prison is the last place I want you. I need you exactly where you are. Inside. Close. Feeding me the access I can't get anywhere else. Phyllis's grip tightened on the phone, her knuckles white. You think you can use me like a pawn? You don't know who you're dealing with, Kane. But Kane only leaned further into his arrogance. Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A woman who can't resist the thrill, who wants to be respected as much as she wants to be loved. You crave the game, Phyllis. That's why you'll never walk away. Not from me. Not from this. The line went dead before she could scream her rebuttal, leaving her standing by the water, her heart hammering, her future dangling by a thread. As night fell over Genoa City, Mariah and Tessa's argument escalated. Mariah finally broke, blurting out the name that had haunted her dreams. It was Cameron Kirsten, she confessed, her whole body shaking. When he came back, when he terrorized Sharon, when he threatened everything, I wanted him gone. I wanted him dead. I tried to make it happen, Tess. I planned it. I set it up. And I failed. He survived, but I still carry the guilt like I killed him in my heart. Tessa's mouth fell open, stunned silence blanketing her. Of course Cameron. The man who had destroyed so many lives, the man who had stalked and brutalized Sharon, the man whose shadow still lingered over the Newman family. In some ways, Mariah's actions made sense. She had wanted to protect the people she loved, but the intent, the sheer willingness to cross that line, terrified Tessa. You should have told me, Tessa whispered, her voice breaking. You should have trusted me with this instead of burying it until it rotted you from the inside out. Mariah sobbed, collapsing into Tessa's arms, begging for forgiveness, swearing that she had never told anyone because she feared not only prison but losing Tessa's love. I was so scared you'd see me as a monster, Mariah cried. Tessa held her, torn between anger, fear, and compassion, her own tears falling as she whispered, I already saw you pulling away. I already felt like I was losing you. The secret didn't protect us, Mariah, it destroyed us. While one couple unraveled under the weight of a deadly secret, Phyllis found herself at war with her own conscience. Cain had drawn her into something dangerous, something that could topple companies and reshape Genoa City's power structure forever. And now, with Nick's warnings echoing in her ear and Cain's manipulations gnawing at her resolve, Phyllis knew she stood at a crossroads. One path led to power, respect, and possibly prison. The other led to a chance at redemption, at proving to her children that she could choose them over chaos. But Phyllis Summers had never been good at choosing the safe road. Nick, sensing that time was running out, confided in Sharon about his fears. If Phyllis doesn't walk away from Cain, she could lose everything. She's already one step away from a 10-year sentence. Sharon, who had survived Cameron Kirsten's wrath and knew firsthand how destructive secrets could be, urged Nick to keep pushing, to remind Phyllis that family was worth more than any scheme. Don't give up on her, Sharon said softly. Sometimes the people who fight the hardest to be respected are the ones who are most afraid of being loved. And so the stage was set, Mariah struggling to salvage her marriage after confessing a near murder, Tessa wrestling with whether love could survive such darkness, Kyle and Claire teetering on the edge of trust and betrayal, Phyllis caught between Cain's manipulations and Nick's warnings, and Cain himself tightening his grip on the very foundation of Genoa City. The threads of every life tangled together in a dangerous web, and as morning broke, one thing became clear. The fallout was only just beginning. The morning after Mariah's confession, the tension between her and Tessa lingered like a storm cloud refusing to break. Tessa had barely slept, tossing and turning as she replayed Mariah's words, the shock of them still ringing in her ears. She had always known her wife carried scars from Cameron Kirsten's torment of Sharon and their family, but she never imagined Mariah had come so close to crossing the ultimate line. At breakfast, as Aria babbled happily in her haiku, Mariah reached across the table, her eyes pleading. Please, Tess, say something. Anything. I can't stand this silence. Tessa's spoon clattered against her bowl as she looked up, her voice raw with emotion. I don't know if I can be the one to save you from this, Mariah. You nearly threw our life away. You nearly threw us away. And I don't know if love is enough to erase that. Across town, Phyllis was on edge, pacing her hotel suite as Cain's words replayed in her mind. He was right about one thing, she thrived on adrenaline, on outmaneuvering everyone around her. But the game had changed, and this one could end with her in handcuffs. When Daniel called to check in, his gentle concern only twisted the knife deeper. Mom, whatever you're caught up in, walk away. Don't let history repeat itself. She wanted to reassure him, to lie and say everything was fine, but for once she couldn't bring herself to spin the truth. Instead, she whispered, I'm trying, Daniel. I'm really trying. The call ended, leaving her with the deafening weight of her choices. Meanwhile, Nick made his way to Newman Enterprises, determined to dig deeper into Cain's AI project. Victoria caught him rifling through files and raised a brow. What are you doing, Nick? He hesitated, then decided to trust her. I think Cain's using Phyllis in a scheme that could blow back on all of us. If I'm right, she's staring down a prison sentence, and Cain will walk away clean. Victoria's eyes narrowed, calculating. Then maybe it's time we set a trap. Cain thinks he's untouchable, but he's not. And if Phyllis won't protect herself, we'll have to do it for her. Back in the park, Kyle tried to reconnect with Claire, showing up with her favorite coffee order and a hesitant smile. Claire accepted the drink but not his apology, her walls still high. You want me to believe you'd risk everything for me, but all I see is a man who let Victor Newman dictate the terms of our relationship. Do you even know what love looks like without strings attached, Kyle? He reached for her hand, desperation flickering in his eyes. I know it looks like you, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove it. Claire didn't pull away, but she didn't answer either, leaving Kyle suspended between hope and heartbreak. By sunset, all of Genoa City seemed to pulse with secrets ready to explode. Mariah on the verge of losing Tessa, Phyllis teetering between freedom and a decade in prison, Kyle clawing to hold on to Claire, and Nick and Victoria plotting to bring Kane Ashby down once and for all. The only question left was who would break first, and who would pay the ultimate price.